Hey everyone, Jason Sherman here. In today's episode of Zero to CEO, I speak to founder and entrepreneur Tim Dwyer. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason, how are you?
Not bad, man. I'm doing pretty good. And today's episode, we're talking about the growth cycle code to 6 times your business, right? And growth cycles, I mean, I've been running startups for so long, and there's always like, the MVP stage where you kind of build your minimum viable product, and then you want to try to get customer feedback and iterate and grow a little bit more, maybe phase 2, and then you want to scale your product after that. How do you identify which growth cycle your business is currently in? That's kind of like the first question I have.
Well, there's a couple of different things. So the first thing is there's a couple of pinch points, or what I call spin points, as a business grows. And it goes from a structural point of view as well as a strategy point of view. So from a structural point of view, for instance, the majority of businesses, over 90%, in most countries, over 95% of businesses never get past 7 people. And the reason for that is that a business transitions from what we call an income revenue business, and it then needs to build some infrastructure in place to get past 7 people. And there's three key things they need. They need to have really good scheduling. They need to have good capacity management, and they need to be able to map capability so they can transfer the capability from one person to the next.
Interesting.
And 95% of businesses don't do that, so therefore they never get past that point.
I mean, why is this so hard? Like, I mean, you figure if you're at 7 people, you should have figured out those infrastructural pieces, right? I mean, it almost sounds like you got to the point where you're organized. So like just adding more people on top. Because we have about 10 people roughly. Sometimes we have 20, depending on what project we're working on. And we have this kind of system in place with processes, calendars, Slack, Google Drive, Trello for task management, and lots of tutorials that we create so that we don't have to do a lot of hands-on training. And it seems that does scale. Like we are able to bring in 10 new people in a week, and then just boom, they're just kind of ready to go.
Yeah. So you've actually built the infrastructure required to be able to scale up and scale down.
Got it.
So
what's the mistake people are making then? That's kind of what I'm curious about.
Well, they don't forward plan, so they don't plan for future demand. Whereas what they'll do is they'll respond to the demand as opposed to planning for when the demand comes in, and so therefore they add in bodies as they're needed, as opposed to setting the vision for say 12 or 15 people and then going, okay, when I'm at that size, what's everyone doing?
Right, like laying out the foundation for the tasks and the work before you. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like,
you've got to map it first.
So like you said, they're not laying the foundation or not preparing. How would they do that?
Well, the way to do it is it's actually a measurement of time, and role clarity. So generally when a business starts, the owner is doing everything, right? They're doing the selling, they're doing the delivery, they're doing the support. Then they'll bring in a support person to take off the administration tasks from them, but they'll still be doing sales and delivery. And then when they bring more and more people on, they'll be having people working in the factory or working in the dispatch department, wherever it might be. And then at some point, there'll be a disconnect between how much sales activity is going on to how much delivery activity is going on. And it's when that disconnect happens that businesses fall into an unprofitable zone. And when they do that, they get scared. So then emotion comes into it and anxiety comes into it. And then they go into a spin of anxiety of going, oh my God, is this going to be okay? And then they retract because of the fear.
That sounds terrible. Yeah, that does not sound like a fun time. I've seen that movie before and I didn't like the ending. So
no, and unfortunately, so many businesses start moving towards the 10 people, and then they hit this ceiling and they hit these unprofitable zones, and they're not quite sure why.
Right.
And the most important thing to do is calculate capacity.
Right.
When they calculate capacity and then get role clarity, then they can push through it.
So let's talk a little bit about this, like the title of the episode, about how aligning with growth cycles can lead to 6 times faster results with less stress. Because you just talked about fear retracting, stress, people getting anxiety and like having issues. So let's do the opposite. How do you do it the right way? How do you align with these growth cycles? How do you get 6 times faster results?
Yeah. So the first thing to do, it doesn't matter the size of the business, is to design the strategy from the brand, the products and services that you're going to sell today and into the future. When we do it this way, when you design brand and products, and then you go into channels, and then you go into sales and delivery, it's what we call, it's from the top down or the outside in from a strategy point of view, but then you implement from the inside out. Now, it's about having the vision, having clarity. Now, when a business leads with brand and its product ecosystem, and it then does value-based pricing, not cost plus pricing. See, this is one of the biggest mistakes businesses make, is they'll add up all the costs of what it takes to deliver their product and then add margin to it. So if you lead with brand and then you build your products and you build the value proposition of your products, you can then do value-based pricing, which then gets your revenue per person number up. Right. So
Interesting.
most businesses around the world do cost plus, and as a result, they might turn over $100,000, $120,000 revenue per person.
Can you give me an example? Can you give me an example of the differences between the two?
Yeah. So cost plus is like I'm running a manufacturing facility and I'm creating glassware for people's coffees in the morning. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So what I then do is I go to China or I go wherever the manufacturing is. I find out how much it's going to cost me to produce that.
Okay, we'll save 25 cents a cup.
45 cents a cup, and then I add margin to it. And so I might add another 45%.
So you're selling it for $1.
Yeah. And then as a result of that, then I've got to take my administration costs and all that sort of stuff off, right? Now, if I start with a brand though, like a Yeti, for instance, right? So Yeti's an awesome global brand.
Yeah.
They've got a great product, but they don't go, oh, here's my product, I'll add 45%. They go, this product's awesome. I reckon people will pay $20 for this, right? And then I'll work out how I can manufacture it for $2. And now I've got really big margins, which means that I can go through those growth cycles with a lot more ease. You know?
So sell the brand, not the product.
That's it. You sell brand and the brand story and then the product. And then
how do you do that
if create more margin?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that was 10 times more. But how do you do that if your brand isn't really well known yet? I guess that's a common question that you might get, or maybe not.
Yeah. Well, Yeti's brand wasn't well known until they started telling their brand story.
Right.
Now, what they do is you create a brand story about the purpose and why you're doing what it is that you're doing, and what your core capability is to be able to deliver against what the consumer is looking for. Yeah. So when you do it that way, you get much, much better margins. And once you've got better margins, you can recruit really good people to then grow the factory and grow the business, because you can see the forward trajectory is actually okay.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, these are great nuggets. Another thing I talk about with my team a lot, especially when you're dealing with student interns, these are people who are, teenagers or in their 20s, and they're different time period in life, different era. They grew up in a different kind of way of life, and emotional intelligence is a big part of that, because you do have to be careful how you talk to people these days. It's just the way it is. So, how do you navigate and integrate emotional intelligence to have sustainable success?
It's perfect. So in business, businesses get stall points and they go into the spin cycles because of a mathematics or a structural issue. But the main reason they actually go into it is because of an emotional issue. And it's not a negative, right? So if we get anxiety, for instance, right? So anxiety is an indicator. So our emotions are our compass. So if I feel anxiety, what that means is I've got some fear of the future. And so what I do is I go into the emotion and go, what am I fearing in the future? But I take responsibility for my emotion because I'm the one that's making me feel anxious. right? So therefore, I can actually then change the actions for the future, which will then reduce or remove the anxiety. Other emotions in businesses that put people into spin cycle is frustration. So frustration is a direct correlation in most cases, not all, but in most cases, that there's a capability gap, either
Mm,
in myself or someone in my team.
yeah.
So if I feel frustrated, I go, hang on a minute. Why am I frustrated? Is it because I don't have capability to do something, or is it something that someone else doesn't have capability? I need to go do training to build them up, right?
These are
The
spot
next
on.
emotion, the next emotion is stress, right?
Oof, the worst one of all.
So yeah, so stress relates directly to time. So it's either I'm not scheduled and I don't have my diary organized, and I get a twitch in the eye whenever that happens. So I listen to my body, right? Or I might be stressed because I'm over capacity. So I've
Mm,
committed to too many
too much,
things,
overwhelmed.
or I'm under capacity. I've got too much time. And when I have too much time, I then create a whole lot of distractions, which
Oh,
then takes me away from the main game.
jeez.
Then the next emotion is a disconnection emotion. So
Mm.
disconnection is where I've lost the reason why I'm doing it,
Oh
which is
no,
I've lost purpose.
that's
Yeah.
not good.
Then
Oh
there's
man,
a lost feeling, right? So I
jeez.
take businesses, CEOs and whatnot, and I get them to remove themselves from the business,
Yeah.
so that and hand over everything to everyone else, and all they have to do is direct. All right. And I say, you're going to go through a period of lost.
Right, because you're
You're going to feel
delegating to
lost.
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. And so therefore you're going to create all this space and you're not going to know what to do. And so you're going to have a lost feeling. So be okay with that.
So can I
So
tell you
our
something?
emotions,
I want
yeah.
to tell you something because this is so relevant to my startup. Everything you just said, word for word, we've gone through all those feelings. And the last one really hit home because we've been running the startup for almost 2 years now, and it's been always overwhelming, right? It's always been frustrating. It's always been, stressful. And one of the things I told my team a couple of months ago, so funny you said that, is I told them all, I had them on a Google Meet, and I said, guys, I can't wait till the day that we no longer have a backlog. The day that we no longer have a backlog and the backlog is clear, things are going to be incredible. And we worked really hard to get through that backlog. And we did. We got through the backlog to the point where the clouds parted, the angels sang, the birds were flying, and it was clear skies ahead. And we did say to ourselves, wow, now what is it we're going to do? Now, the thing is, we established those goals immediately. Like we knew what we wanted
Yeah.
to do. We just never had the time
Yeah.
for it. So I think that
Yeah.
to your point is once you can clear out all that stuff you're talking about and you can get to that point where it's clear pastures, how do you then go to the next step of like, okay, now let's tackle the time effectively, using productive results? Like what do you do? Like how do you do that?
Well, what I've created, Jason, is I've created an entire map,
Okay.
right? And what the map tells you is exactly what to do and in what order,
Amazing.
right? So if you want to grow fast, if you want to go 6 times faster, then it's better to do it with a map than without a map.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's where in the early 2000s, I said, I wonder if we could create the equivalent of Google Maps for business.
I love that.
Um, because what Google Maps did for us is when you get in a car now and you're traveling from A to B and you've never been there before, you just put in the address and
Yeah.
it gives you the route to take.
Instead of printing out
And it
those
gives you,
dastardly MapQuest directions on a printer and then you looking at the paper in the middle of the night, it was a pain in the
yeah,
butt.
yeah. Well, the key thing around what Google did is it orientated you to where you were starting from. So you always knew your position
Yeah.
on where you were. That was the key component. So GPS mapping, you knew exactly where you were. And so therefore it gives you confidence to go from A to B. And I kind of say that the whole mapping system like Apple Maps or Google Maps have saved a lot of marriages. because
You're on
there's no
time.
longer fighting in the car anymore about where we're going and how we're getting and whether we need to be going left or right or whatever. And
I
so in
love
the
that.
early 2000s, I said, I wonder if I could do that for business. And so it took me 15 years, almost 20
Oof.
years to work it out.
Wow. That's some
Yeah.
massive IP you have. And is this available on your website? Where can people get a hold of
Yeah.
you or your map or just working with you in general?
And well, I've written it all down because I wanted to get it all out to as many people as possible.
Nice.
So it's in a complete book. It is a very big book, but it's got every aspect of business in there. So it covers every single element, and it shows the mathematics, it shows the structures, it shows the emotions. But the most important thing, it shows how to connect into your intuition and use intuition as your guide, and then your emotions as your guide, and then use the structure to support the growth of the business.
Makes sense.
So that's all in a book. People can go onto my website and go to the book and pre-register it. It's going to be available August 2025. It's when its release date.
Sounds good. And that's at Ptolemy.com, Tolemy.com.
That's it. That's the one.
Awesome, guys. Check it out if you want to talk to Tim, learn how to grow. And I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We'll see you in the next one.